this is incredible. This is the exact opposite of how things normally work. That's pretty cool, man. I'm sorry. This is a cool ass thing that she said. I was wrong. I'm eating crow. I'll take it, you know? Egg on my face. Wait, what? The daughter of the owner of LA Times said that the decision not to endorse Harris stemmed from her stance on the Gaza war. Oh my God, I'm eating crow today. Oh my God, I'm eating crow today. That's crazy. Oh my God, I thought it was like, oh my God, I jokingly said LA Times and WAPO are based. They're actually refusing to endorse Kamala Harris over her Gaza policy. Wait, as in she's not pro-Palestine or not pro-Israel enough? Wait, hold on. A California native and resident of Los Angeles, Ms. Harris was not a unifying and inspirational generational figure, but in the board members' view, but also an important bulwark between Donald J. Trump and democratic institutions. Wait. They were unaware, however, that a different tone and more powerful group had been meeting the family, Dr. Nika Soon-Shiong, the newspaper's owner, with far different plans for the newspaper's voice. This week, the biotech billionaire who had bought the paper in 2018 for $500 million acted on those plans with scant internal or public explanation, abruptly vetoing the planned endorsement, informing the board through an intermediary that the LA Times would make no recommendation in the presidential race. For days, the readers in overwhelmingly liberal Southern California speculated angrily about the decision that was widely regarded as favor to Mr. Trump and a vote of no confidence to Ms. Harris. Thousands of readers canceled subscriptions, but in a stunning statement on Saturday, his daughter, Nika Soon-Shiong, 31, a progressive political activist who has frequently been accused of trying to meddle in the paper's news coverage, said the decision was motivated by Ms. Harris's continued support for Israel and its war in Gaza. Our family made the joint decision. Oh my God. I never in a billion years would have thought, are my eyes deceiving me? What? We don't honestly believe that, right? Like, come on, dude, don't be naive. This was the first and only time I've been involved in the process. Ms. Soon-Shiong, who has no form of role at the paper, said in a statement to the New York Times, as a citizen of a country openly financing genocide and as a family that experienced South African apartheid, the endorsement was an opportunity to repudiate justifications of the widespread targeting of journalists and ongoing war on children. Over the past 6 years, writers and editors have increasingly chafed at the interference Dr. Soon-Shiong, 72, and his family in the newsroom, where owners are generally regarded less proprietors with the right to impose their personal views as guardians of public trust. In January, Kevin Morita stepped down as executive editor after clashing with Dr. Soon-Shiong over an unpublished article about an acquaintance of the newspaper owner, as well as other conflicts in the newsroom. Oh my God, every other media outlet is going to come after these guys now. Even this New York Times coverage is like, the New York Times coverage is, like, originally, I thought that, they were doing the billionaires are interfering with the election. And that's what I thought, too. This is very clearly a billionaire family endorsing Trump without actually endorsing him and disguising it in woke. Stop being naive. I don't know. According to his Wikipedia page, her dad tried to get a position in Trump's White House. So it could be. That could be the case. I'm still like, that was my initial assumption. My initial assumption was this. These guys are billionaires, okay? And billionaires have a lot of contracts that they can get from whoever comes in the next administration. And they see that, like, it's a close race. And I do remember this, which is why I thought it was like, which is why I would have never thought in a million years that they would never actually take a stance like this. Taking that stance publicly isn't what you would do if you were that reason. There's plenty of shit they can lie about. I know. There's a lot of controversy and confusion over LAT's decision not to endorse a presidential candidate. I trust the editorial board's judgment. For me, genocide is the line in the sand. The temptation is to speak in muffled tones. Wait, this is her? I would love to have her on the broadcast. That's crazy. For my family, apartheid is not a vague concept. My father was an emergency surgeon at Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto. He treated students shot by the police during the Soweto uprisings, where 176 died protesting the brutal system of racial segregation. Both parties have plenty of billionaire supporters at the end of the day. They aren't necessarily going to go for Trump. No, there are. Okay, this is confusing. Because there is a lot of stuff that the LA Times did early on that I did not like. Okay. I am I am quite interested in finding out more. NPR says Washington Post and owners have too much business to lose if they endorse and piss off Trump. Yeah, I think that analysis isn't wrong. I can totally see there's no reason to woke jacket here. They're going to get more heat for saying it's over Gaza instead of saying they're pro-Trump. Yeah, she probably was completely removed from those decisions. Early on, it was probably the editorial board and not the owners. There are two people here, her and her father. It's confusing because it says the paper's board was ready to endorse. Okay, here's what we do know. Okay? Here's what we do know. Oh my God, she's younger than me. That's crazy. First of all, that's insane. What is happening? What's going on? What is happening in this world? How is that I am so old? That's frustrating. That's a totally irrelevant, but still very frustrating fact to come to terms with. God damn it. I am 2 years older than her. How is that possible? What the I'm getting old. I'm getting old. I'm getting old. I'm getting old. Okay. I'm also ADD. I'm also so ADHD right now. What the I can't even focus. I can't focus. I'm an old man, and that's why my focus is gone. Let's get back to the story. Let's get back to the matter at hand. Nika is super based. Oh my God. Cinemarxism. A Cinemarxism endorsement for a billionaire's daughter that was the public safety commissioner that held a position in local office in Los Angeles. It's over. It's done. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. I never in a million years would have ever heard Cinemarxism say anything remotely positive about anyone that has ever held local office ever. This person must be like a Maoist or something. Okay. This gives me hope. Whenever I hear people that are in like, that come from, relatively wealthy families or people who are pretty wealthy themselves have these sorts of remarkable opinions that are so unheard of in places of power. It actually gives me a little bit of hope seeing my favorite documentarian / anarchist anti-cop Los Angelino endorse this person is shocking. Now I trust everything that she has said. Okay. What the Nika is just covering for her Trump supporting dad, except for his precious baby girl. Not that she has done shit. I don't know. This is funny because the coverage of the LA Times and every single newspaper in the US has painted dissent against the war as criminal. That is true. That is like not wrong. That is literally not wrong. If she that's why it's shocking. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah. Even if her dad actually made this decision in a pro-Trump fashion, it is very cool that she's now cooking him a little bit and simultaneously associating this like massive media coverage worthy decision with a pro-Palestinian anti-genocide moral position. This will absolutely change the dynamic a little bit. Still worth mentioning that it's overall a net negative because that means the editorial team of a major newspaper is actually in the pocket, but a billionaire's daughter got in the way. She might be the only exception to an overall unfortunate situation. No, I agree. I would love to talk to this person. I would love to get in contact with this person. I'd love to talk to them. They seem dope. So, So let's get back to the story. So in January, Kevin Morita stepped down as executive editor, clashing with Dr. Soon-Shiong over an unpublished article about an acquaintance of the newspaper owner, as well as other conflicts in the newsroom. Just a few weeks later, the publication carried out its most widespread layoffs in more than a decade, cutting 115 journalists in a move that slashed the newsroom by more than 20%. But the dispute over the endorsement echoed 2 days later when the Washington Post announced that it would also not make an endorsement in the race, prompted urgent new questions about what had motivated the decision. Speaking this week on the cable news outlet Spectrum, which regularly carries Los Angeles Times content, Dr. Soon-Shiong was asked about a possible political motivation. I want us desperately to air all the voices on the opinion side, on the op-ed side, he said. He said he did not know whether readers viewed him or his family as ultra-progressive or not, but I'm an independent. In an interview with one of his own reporters on Friday, Dr. Soon-Shiong said that his stand was not based on any single issue, nor did he intend by withholding an endorsement to favor either Ms. Harris or Mr. Trump. We should be an organization that stands up and says the facts, presenting views across the political spectrum, he said. I think that the country needs that desperately. Several senior editors of the Times said they were not briefed on the reasons for Dr. Soon-Shiong's decision, but they noted that he had often been critical of the Biden administration, had boasted of having dinner with Mr. Trump after he won the presidency in 2016, and often has approvals pending with the Federal Food and Drug Administration. They speculated that he may have been hedging his bets over a range of issues. One person potentially in a position to know was the publication's current executive director, Terry Tang, who replaced Mr. Merida. In a departure from the practice of the most major news organizations, which have a clear organizational separation between news and opinion, Ms. Tang, who had been the publication's editorial page editor, took on oversight of both departments when she became the executive director. Ms. Tang previously served as an editor at the New York Times for 20 years. Ms. Tang did not respond to requests for comment and did not appear to have addressed the staff over the issue. Mariel Garza, who was the paper's editorials editor and who resigned in protest on Tuesday, said that she had been caught completely off guard. Dr. Soon-Shiong, she said, had been told in late September the board planned to endorse Ms. Harris, an unsurprising choice given the Times' past criticism of Mr. Trump and his generally liberal editorial stances. Ms. Harris, who is originally from the Bay Area, has been married for more than a decade to a Los Angeles entertainment lawyer, Doug Emhoff, and has kept a home in the upscale West Los Angeles neighborhood of Brentwood. Oh, damn, she lives in Brentwood? Brentwood is beautiful. Ms. Garza said she became increasingly concerned as weeks passed without approval of the endorsement from the owner. 2 weeks ago, she said she learned from Ms. Tang that Dr. Soon-Shiong had decided against issuing an endorsement. She said Ms. Tang told her that he had not given her a clear rationale for the decision. Ms. Garza, who was the first person to resign on the editorial board, said she felt no choice but to resign in protest. Used to rent in Brentwood? Yeah, my living circumstances in Brentwood were quite different than I suspect Kamala Harris's, let's be real. This is our duty, she said in an interview on Friday. It is in a scary time, and we all need to be brave and not be cowed. By the end of the week, two more editorial members, Karen Klein and Robert Greene, a 2021 Pulitzer Prize winner, had also resigned. All vigorously contested Dr. Soon-Shiong's assertion that they had chosen to remain silent. This is not about disagreeing with the owner, said Ms. Klein, an author and specialist in education who's been with the Times for 35 years, 22 of them as an editorial writer. To do this a couple weeks before the election is truly doing an editorial, a make-believe, invisible editorial that sends a message that we have doubts about Kamala. The confrontation over the endorsement comes after years of uneasy relations between the owner and the newsroom. Reporters and editors have chafed at phone calls, emails, and social media postings, offering questions and suggestions about the news coverage from both Dr. Soon-Shiong and his daughter. In the past, she has been critical of the publication's coverage of crime, policing, and Israel's war in Gaza, among other things. Several reporters interviewed described Ms. Soon-Shiong contacting them directly with critiques of their coverage or publicly posting her negative opinions about the stories on social media. A former editor recalled reporters worrying about whether her comments were actually coming from her father. You never know how much Nika is speaking for herself and how much she is speaking for her whole family, the editor said. This is incredible. This is the exact opposite of how things normally work. Okay. And it's really interesting that given that this is the exact opposite of how things really work, I think you will see a lot more backlash on this, perhaps even more backlash on this than Jeff Bezos, who I don't think is motivated by, the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden administration's decisions on Israel, unless Jeff Bezos, given his hatred for MBS and MBS's allegiances with Israel, also weirdly is anti-Israel for some reason, in which case I'm losing my mind. Okay. At that point, it's Jover. You know what I mean? Jeff Bezos, more like Jeff Based. Oh, okay. You're in too deep now. I'm just saying crazier things have happened. Okay. Yeah, she actually defunded the police in West Hollywood. West Hollywood cut a few sheriff's deputies. It fueled a national firestorm on crime. Defunding. This is absolute copium. It's big business making overtures to Trump. That was my initial assessment as well, and that has not changed for Jeff Bezos. I think they see, first of all, a lot of the tech bros, a lot of the Silicon Valley tech bros are, a lot of the Silicon Valley tech bros are insanely pro-Trump, okay? Openly pro-Trump. That's number one. That's something you got to remember, okay? So that is not as shocking to me. That is not as shocking to me in terms of people being like, don't endorse Kamala Harris. And then they just use like the fake, we shouldn't endorse anybody, we're a newspaper type shit. Okay, it's like, come on, dude. How did the doctor earn their billions? Biotech. Early in the coronavirus pandemic, Dr. Soon-Shiong wanted medical reporters to investigate connections between COVID-19 and cancer, which many perceived as a story that, if published, would further his business interests. Two people with knowledge of the situation said, wait, okay, that in and of itself, while self-serving, is not necessarily like a bad lead to push for. Why are they, what? Okay, that's a weird thing to criticize. That is a weird thing to, that's like, dude, this is literally QAnon. What are you, an anti-vaxxer? Like, okay, yeah, he makes cancer medication, got it. But also, that's like a weird thing to be like, yeah, this cancer researcher who has made cancer medication wants his reporters to investigate the connection between COVID and cancer. That's an understandable position, whether he was directly getting whether he was directly making money off the situation or not. That's kind of weird, but okay. This is why I always look, as much as I criticize the pharmaceutical giants and big industry of that sort, okay, I have always maintained the position that like sometimes the broader interests of the public, surviving, living, being alive, and the broader interests of like the billionaire class align in a positive way. A lot of people look at that, especially during COVID, and go, well, I hate corporations and I hate big pharma. They're trying to make me gay. I look at it and I go, well, billionaires want their cattle to not die and get back to work faster, so they want everyone to be vaccinated. Of course they do. But it's one of those unique moments where like they might have an alternative reason for why they want you to get vaccinated, but ultimately it still aligns. It's still a good thing. You know what I mean? And this is yet another one of those moments where it's like, sure, he might have a cancer vaccine or he might have some cancer medication. He's a cancer researcher. There's a conflict of interest here for sure, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Late last year, tried to dissuade the former executive director, Mr. Morita, from publishing a story about a doctor who was an acquaintance of his. After clashing with Dr. Soon-Shiong over the staffing levels and newsroom management, Mr. Morita left the paper in January. That seems weird. That is definitely like self-serving bullshit. I don't know what this was about, but several sources told the New York Times at the time that Dr. Soon-Shiong had stepped in to make inquiries about the newspapers reporting on the doctor, who was embroiled in dueling lawsuits with a woman who claimed to have been bitten by his dog. Yeah, This is typical rich guy shit and unacceptable. I think it's unacceptable for wealthy people, for billionaires to like purchase newspapers and then motivate them to carry out their agenda. This is one of the major biases that I talk about in mainstream press, because although in the United States of America, they're not technically owned by the state in the same way that like Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatar state or BBC is owned by the British state and carries out the state's interests openly because they are a state newspaper. There are still very clear ambitions, very clear motivations amongst these privately owned newspapers that align with the interests of capital and align with the American State Department. This is something that I explain all the time in my media criticisms, right? It's an important part of media literacy in general. And having said that, however, it happens across the board. It happens in every outlet. It happens in every institution of journalism. And it usually happens in quiet ways. It doesn't happen with like direct interference in this exact same way, right? It usually occurs in ways where you kind of know what you can say, what you can't say. You get elevated, manufacturing consent style. You get elevated to higher and higher offices within the structure of the media. If you play ball on certain things, right? Like that's usually how it's kept up. This is unique because it goes against the grain. Direct interference on a story does not necessarily go against the grain. Direct interference on a story is like, you know, typical billionaire shit. But if there's any kind of like real issues with the Harris administration's policies, foreign policy specifically, in the Biden-Harris administration's actions with Israel, okay, if that is the real issue here, if they are at odds with the Kamala Harris campaign for this particular reason, and that's the reason why they're withholding their endorsement, that is different. That is different than like Jeff Bezos' motivations, most likely. And that's actually unique. That's actually shocking. That is not something that I suspected would ever happen. Soon-Shiong made several noteworthy editorial proposals encouraging the paper to vastly increase its coverage of non-white communities in the Los Angeles area, and suggested the paper avoid using the word looting when covering civil unrest over police brutality and racial injustice. The Times subsequently changed its style guidelines to specify when the paper felt it was appropriate to use the word. This is from a Daily Beast article in 2021. That's really interesting. LA Times billionaire daughter is tinkering with the paper and staffers welcome it. Now, there's a couple different different interests at play here. Broadly, this is hard to, I won't say that this is across the board the same, and I certainly do not know what the internals look like at LA Times. But broadly speaking, editorial teams, as far as my experience goes from the journalists I talk to, editorial teams are sometimes a little bit at odds ideologically with the journalists that are doing the reporting. They have a lot of power. They can change the dynamic of a story. They can literally take original reporting and actually make the article come across as the exact opposite. This is something that editorial teams can do, right? Like editors can do this. The editorial board's opinion on a certain issue can like genuinely change the outcome of the news coverage. And as far as I've seen, a lot of the lower level staffers and actual journalists are oftentimes, including but not limited to the New York Times even, at odds with what the editors are trying to get out of certain stories in the way that they are trying to massage certain stories. Every now and then something actually slips out, or every now and then there's a delicate balance where you are trying to retain credibility. You're trying to be a credible source of news. So you turn around and you give in. And the New York Times certainly does a litany of those sorts of stories where everyone's shocked, where they're like, damn, they just interviewed 56 healthcare professionals in Gaza and openly admitted that like they've never seen so many babies with bullets lodged in their skulls. That's crazy. So that happens every now and then for one reason or another. And I think that if this is true, if what I'm seeing is correct, it seems like at least the daughter, Soon-Shiong's daughter, definitely has a political perspective that is aligned with ours here in this community. And for one reason or another, she has chosen to speak out at a time when there's a lot of eyeballs and a lot of attention on Los Angeles Times refusing to endorse Kamala Harris, and is saying that the real reason is because of the current administration's policies on Gaza. At one point, Dr. Soon-Shiong contacted Mr. Morita demanding to see a copy of the story, suggesting that it should not be published. The New York Times reporting showed. Dr. Soon-Shiong also told Mr. Morita on a call that he would fire journalists if he learned that they were concealing the completed article from him. A story was finally published in April. This is pretty funny. Bitten by a billionaire's dog or a case of extortion? A legal saga from an LA dog park. That is hilarious. That this is the scary... What? This is the scary story that he didn't want people to hear. Dr. Gary Michelson, a 2019 gala for his Michelson Found Animals Foundation in Beverly Hills. Michelson, 75, seems an unlikely antagonist in a dog bite case. After reaching a $1.35 billion patent dispute settlement with medical device maker Medtronic 2 decades ago, he has made a name for himself as a philanthropist in animal welfare and other fields. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005 orphaned more than 100,000 pets, he established the nation's first free microchip pet registry. He's standing prize offer $25 million for the development of single-dose medication that can permanently and safely sterilize both cats and dogs. His devotion to animal welfare extended to his own pet Blue, a Bayesian white dog with droopy eyes. He's celebrated on Instagram with a tongue-in-cheek handle, Scary Pit Bully. The page, since taken down, documented the maturation of the American Bully XL, the largest muscular breed derived from the American Pit Bull Terrier, and the United Kennel Club describes as more gentle and playful, making an excellent family dog. Michelson and Eveling, 37, an immigrant from Sweden, were regulars at Veterans Barrington Park. Oh my God, this is the dog park I used to go to all the time. That's crazy. That's crazy. I used to literally I rented. When I rented in Braidwood, that's the dog park I went to. That dog park is cursed, by the way. I want to tell you something really crazy. It's on a VA land. And there's speculation that there was nuclear testing being conducted, and that there might be nuclear radiated bodies being buried there as well. Anyway, that's besides the point. That's some real LA lore right now, but that's crazy. It's a beautiful dog park. It's a beautiful area in general. The incident took place on August 9th, 2022, just outside of a fenced-in dog park on the ball fields where owners let their dogs run free. Eveling in her lawsuit said that she was walking her dog Neo, a Tamascan, when Blue charged her pet, and that she was bitten trying to protect it. She sought treatment that evening at an urgent care clinic, complaining of pain in her left hand from a crush injury and an abrasion on her right elbow, according to medical records. An x-ray found no fractures or vascular injuries in her hand, which was put in a finger split. She was given a tetanus shot and prescribed antibiotics. In messages sent to the Times, Michelson said the records are not evidence of dog bites, claiming instead she might have twisted her finger on her dog's collar and scraped her elbow while falling. He said afterwards he checked on Eveling for days and offered to pay her medical bills. He said that the calls were cordial and she seemed okay. Michelson said she also set up a session at his house with a celebrity dog trainer, Cesar Millan, a longtime friend, to work with Neo and Blue together so that Sandra would feel comfortable at the dog park with Blue around. Aw, it's a beautiful pit. It was to protect the animal. If he's an animal rescuer, he probably was pushing against the article to protect the bully dog. Yeah, probably. After the session, Michelson said he and Eveling would see each other at the Gold's Gym Venice, where they both brought their service dog pets. He said that things were always quite friendly and that Eveling never complained about being bitten until she learned of his wealth. Attorney Benjamin Taylor. So anyway, the article came out basically. This is such a funny thing to like demand editorial control over, by the way. God, billionaires are so stupid. I'm sorry. Excuse me. But like yet another case of like two multi-billionaires involved in this, and they are just as stupid as the average person is, okay? Like, this is some shit that you would do, or this is some shit that I would do, okay? They're just like us in many ways in their capacity to be stupid. You know what I mean? I don't get it. Isn't this a different billionaire? Yes. This is another billionaire philanthropist who cares about animal welfare. It's funny because like this is literally a place that I frequented quite a bit every single day, as a matter of fact, when I had fish. Yeah, the only difference between this guy who is a pit owner and anyone else is basically like the fact that he has billions of dollars so he can get lawyers and also knows the billionaire owner of the Los Angeles Times newspaper. So we can just like stop that from being covered. And it seems like the article came out and did this wishy-washy shit where they were like, is this a case of extortion? And it's obvious to me that this is because of the editorial control enforced by the billionaire owner of the newspaper, who happens to be friends with the guy that they're talking about. Okay? Attorney Benjamin Taylor, who represent your proximity to wealth is insane for your whole life. Dog, when I was in Barrington, I made, like when I went to this dog park every day, I walked to the dog park. I was making $30,000 a year. Okay? That's just LA. I was frequenting the dog park that this billionaire is going to with his pit bull, and I was making 30 grand. Okay? I might have even met the guy. I actually don't know. At least this journalistic malpractice is adorable and low rent versus New York Times giving Bret Stephens a column or Tom Cotton a column. 30K is fairly high, not gonna lie, but probably not for LA. 30K is fairly high. What are we talking about? Whenever someone comes in here and says $30,000 is fairly high salary, I assume you're 12, okay, or 14. Because in Oklahoma, it is no longer considered fairly high. Like, you got to be like living in Mississippi. Even in Mississippi, it's not, is it? Like, Where would $30,000 in the United States of America right now be considered a high salary? Brother, I'm in Canada. Oh, because it's you just described a salary that is literally below the poverty line. Back then, I was getting money from the government when I was doing my taxes. Just so you know, I feel like it's not even good enough in Canada unless you're living in the northern point or something. Anyway, Mississippi resident, 30K is not enough for basic survival. Mississippi has the highest food costs in the US. Like, I think there are certain parts in the United States of America, like in very remote parts of the US, 30K a year could probably help you get by, but you wouldn't be living super comfortably at this stage. But you would still be suffering. Like, you would be experiencing significant financial hardship. Now, the 30K salary I'm talking about is basically almost 10 years ago at this point, so obviously it's a little different for me. But even then in Los Angeles, it was, again, significant financial hardship. As a renter especially. Most of my money went to rent. Shit sucked. So 30K is low in Spain. Okay. So this we're just like going all over the place. A Los Angeles Times spokesperson spoke to Dr. Soon-Shiong, had not wanted the newspaper to be used as a source of exploitation in the legal dispute. He simply urged the editors to ensure that an investigation was done before any story was published. Ms. Soon-Shiong had telegraphed the concerns over Ms. Harris's Israel policy in a post on social media earlier this week about the publication's decision not to endorse. This is not a vote for Donald Trump. This is a refusal to endorse a candidate that is overseeing a war on children. I'm proud of the LA Times decision, she posted on X. That's pretty cool, man. I'm sorry. This is a cool ass thing that she said. I was wrong. I'm eating crow. At the Hasanabi broadcast, if this is correct, if this is actually the truth, then, crows have been eaten. Okay. I'll take it, egg on my face. Straight up. There's a lot of controversy and confusion over LA Times' decision not to endorse a presidential candidate. I trust the editorial board's judgment. For me, genocide is the line in the stand. The temptation is to speak in muffled tones about the issue the international courts have called a plausible genocide. But this moment requires opposition to crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid, as my parents did in South Africa. For my family, apartheid is not a vague concept. My father was an emergency surgeon at Barak Vanath Hospital in Soweto. He treated students shot by the police during the Soweto uprisings, where 176 died protesting the brutal system of racial segregation. Apartheid was not just a political project, it was a profitable one, underpinned by lobbyists in Washington, U.S. defense contracts, and an international market for weapons, diamonds, and gold. Many U.S. news organizations and politicians were complicit. The official case for apartheid, South Africa's foreign minister outlines the history and philosophy behind his country's policy of separate development for whites and non-whites. Apartheid, illegal settlements, and the genocide in Palestine are profitable too, underpinned by U.S. arms dealers witnessing record profits. Ain't no way the New York Times is saying we can't endorse Kamala because she's killing babies. No, this is not New York Times. This is Los Angeles Times. Los Angeles Times, owned by a private billionaire. This is that private billionaire's daughter saying that Kamala Harris's, the administration that Kamala Harris is a part of, the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration's actions in Gaza led to this decision, led to this interference. I also know from industry people that any positive Israel piece in the LA Times has been seen as a victory because of that original controversy right after 10/7. You don't think she is? She openly says she wants to back up Israel. Wait, what? I have never. Yes, Kamala Harris is 100% pro-Israel. What are you talking about? Yes. I didn't. That's not a picture of his daughter. Breaking. Daughter of LA Times owner says endorsement decision stems from Harris stance on Gaza war. That's not a picture of his daughter. That's funny. Her name is Nika. Ring any bells? Yes, dude. It does. Okay. It does ring bells for me. You know what it rings bells for me for? It rings drums for me. This is the coolest development that I have encountered in a story such as this one, and perhaps one of the coolest instances where I have been wronged. Like I've been wrong. I still don't know if this is the full tilt decision. Was that racially motivated? First of all, she's not Japanese, dumbass. Her name is Nika. I kid you not. And Luffy's character in One Piece is also Nika, the sun god. I can't even. Joy Boy is Nika, the sun god. All right. This is not a vote for Donald Trump. This is a refusal to endorse a candidate as overseeing a war on children. I'm proud of the LA Times decision. But until her statement on the New York Times on Saturday, she had remained silent about how to interpret the posting. For the sake of the living and in the name of the dead, for the sake of our collective humanity, we must raise the moral floor, she said in the statement. In his own social media post this week, Dr. Soon-Shiong had pushed back on Ms. Garza's version of the events surrounding the endorsement decision. He wrote on X that he had directed the editorial board to compare the policies of each candidate and let readers decide whom to choose. Oh, okay. So Pop is saying that's not the case. It seems like Pop and the daughter are at odds here. He wrote on X that he directed the editorial board to compare the policies of each candidate and let readers decide whom to choose. Instead of adopting this path as suggested, the editorial board chose to remain silent, and I accepted their decision, he said. In Southern California, civic leaders have expressed outrage at what many have viewed as an abdication of responsibility by a major news outlet in the most populous state in the nation. Newspapers serve as a civic conscience for communities around the world. In that role, they have the ability to speak truth to power, said Austin Butner, a local financier who has served in a number of high-profile leadership positions in Los Angeles, including a brief stint a decade ago as the publisher and chief executive of the Los Angeles Times. It's a terrible loss for society when they abdicate that responsibility. But it is the Times newsroom where most of the alarm has spread. We endorsed every other race on the ballot this year. It doesn't make sense to pull your punch with the most consequential office in the most consequential election that any of us can remember, said Robin Abkarian, a columnist who has worked there for more than 3 decades. And this is what's puzzling to everybody. It's this lingering feeling that something isn't being expressed and we don't know that. Some were urging a more public explanation of the politics behind the endorsement decision, if there was any. If there's an explanation, he should say so, said Ms. Klein, the former editorial board member. When you have a gap in information like this, the tendency among readers is to fill it in. Is this his daughter expressing opposition on Gaza? Is he hoping Trump will lower his taxes? Does he have pharmaceuticals pending before the FDA? And he's worried about approval from a Trump administration. He should tell people. Jim Newton, a former editorial page editor on the paper who is now a historian and lecturer at University of California, Los Angeles, shared an email exchange he had with Ms. Tang after the news broke, in which he urged Ms. Tang to reconsider the decision not to endorse. He told her, set back years of effort to restore the paper to a place of civic responsibility and candor with readers, and unravels a lot of hard, important work at a particularly unwise time. Ms. Tang responded with a brief thank you and later told him that she did not believe Mr. Newton understood the situation. Seems like maybe you don't either, he replied. You assured me a few months ago that the editorial board controlled endorsements. You sure about that? Dan Morian, a former LA Times staff writer, who went on to become the editorial page editor in the Sacramento Bee, said that the paper can justify not endorsing a presidential campaign because people usually have enough information. Yeah, that's the other part of this, by the way. Clearly, in terms of like endorsements, even the gray lady, the paper of record, the New York Times, and their endorsements are relatively unconsequential. And there is nothing that rings truer than the New York Times' double endorsement of, was it Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren? So it's funny. This is like inside baseball, right? And it's obviously in terms of impact, it ironically does more in terms of create like motion in either direction when there is a story surrounding not endorsing a candidate rather than endorsing a candidate, if that makes sense. Do you see what I'm saying? So here's my speculation. Wee woo, speculation alert. My speculation is that Pop might have had a different opinion as to why he didn't want an endorsement that perhaps revolved around, a similar decision-making structure to Jeffrey Bezos's and had nothing to do with Israel-Palestine at all, whereas perhaps the daughter actually is taking advantage of this opportunity to make it seem like it's over Gaza in an effort to get more coverage on the matter. You know, does that make sense? And it's not to like save face. It's not to save face at all, because this, unironically, in my opinion, will draw significantly more controversy than if the dad straight up was like, endorse Trump instead. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand what I'm saying here? You smell me? Like her turning around and being like, no, the reason why we are not endorsing is because of Gaza, unironically is a more controversial position than simply endorsing Donald Trump even. It makes it significantly more newsworthy as well. The temptation is to speak in muffled tones about an issue international courts have called a plausible genocide, but this moment requires opposition to crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid, as my parents did in South Africa. For my family, apartheid is not a vague concept. Oh, I'm rereading it over and over again. This is not a vote for Donald Trump. This is a refusal to endorse a candidate that's overseeing a war on children. I'm proud of the LA Times decision, just as I am certain there is no such thing as children of darkness. There is no such thing as human shields. Yeah. Apartheid, illegal settlements, a genocide in Palestine are profitable too, underpinned by U.S. dealers witnessing record profits. Northrop Grumman's stock is up 28%. General Dynamics is up 37%. Lockheed Martin up 55%. Dick Cheney is pleased. The goal for these profiteers is to distract and divide, to keep the weapons flowing. This is one reason even the most basic U.S. laws banning weapons sales to militaries that restrict humanitarian aid are being ignored. As Mandela said, the temptation is to speak in muffled tones about the rights of people of Palestine. Having achieved our own freedom, we can fall into the trap of washing our hands of difficulties that others face. Yet we would be less than human if we did so. That's sick. So this is what her statement was. This is what his statement was. So many comments about the LA Times editorial board not providing a presidential endorsement this year. Let me clarify how this decision came about. The editorial board was provided the opportunity to draft a factual analysis of all the positive and negative policies by each candidate during their tenures of the White House and how these policies affected the nation. In addition, the board was asked to provide their understanding of the policies and plans enunciated by the candidates during this campaign and its potential effect on the nation in the next 4 years. In this way, with this clear and nonpartisan information side by side, our readers could decide who would be worthy of being president for the next 4 years. Instead of adopting this path as suggested, the editorial board chose to remain silent. And I accepted their decision. Please vote. Dear Dr. Pat, could you do something about the constant stream of anti-Semitism that is platformed by the once prestigious LA Times? Or is that in line with your views? After all, your own daughter has called Israel an apartheid state that is now committing genocide against the Palestinians. Uber rich, uber woke, uber awful. The source, Nika responds to Visegrad. We have the same enemies. That's cool. The source of this image should be cited. It provides context and offers a unique analysis. From the river to the sea. Sure, sounds good, baby. Want another beer? Did you really think that kind of cute guy really cared about justice for East Timor? The truly talented PJ O'Rourke. Wait, what? She is by standard. What the? Oh, that's gross as hell, dude. Oh, that's so gross. Here's a picture of Nika Soon-Shiong, the absurdly wealthy daughter of the owner of the LA Times, a paper which she helped ruin and bankrupt every day with her progressive reporting demands and newsroom interference. Her story is the same as her dad's. The editorial board chose to remain silent instead of writing a neutral comparison. She expanded on that by saying the editorial chose to remain silent because of Gaza, whereas it seemed they were silent out of protest at her dad. Yeah. This is very cool. She's very cool. Founder of Fund for Guaranteed Income, PhD candidate at University of Oxford. She's on the board for the Committee to Protect Journalists and also One Fair Wage, National Council on Equal Education. She is the GOAT. This person is my new favorite person that I have just found out about. Holy shit. And she was literally my public safety commissioner. I would love to interview her. This is not the type of person that you usually experience, but it's very cool. She went to Stanford University, got a master's in African studies, bachelor's in international relations, and a doctoral candidate. And she's a doctoral candidate at the University of Oxford. You follow her on Twitter? Yeah, I just did. Yeah, I think it's sick. I think it's very cool. Please stop silencing epic rap battles of history. Okay, dude, calm down. We'll get there. What is this? Karina Koff is stumping for Trump. I don't know what kind of problems she had besides a high marginal tax rate like any rich person, but it's super funny to see her stumping for a side that hates everything about how she has lived her life. They want her with 4 kids chomping Valium in the kitchen like it's 1961. Hoping more people see right through the lies, bullshit and propaganda from Kamala Harris and the left. We don't need 4 more years of this shit. Our country's in shambles. And if you think our sitting VP is going to magically fix it, you're dead wrong. Corinna, would you be interested in discussing this over a couple games of Fortnite? Fortnite Fridays is quickly Fortnite Friday, not Fridays, is quickly becoming the internet's most beloved talk show. And we're not afraid to get political. We have mutual friends, by the way. Corinna Kopp quit OnlyFans, real 9/11. Wait, really? She did? But yeah, this was controversial. LA Times blocks reporters who signed open letter criticizing Israel from covering Gaza. I recall this, of course. This is from Max Tanney at Semaphore, updated November 17th, 2023. It's older reporting from the early stages of Israel's genocide in Gaza. This I remember, I recall, and this I did not like at all. Los Angeles Times is also famous for that one TikTok, on my TikTok, as a matter of fact, where I watched them cover the UCLA student encampments positively and then in real time watch them change the title, if you remember. That was also LA Times. Decisions like that are made by editors, though. Decisions like that are not made by the journalists themselves. And usually what I see in my experience with the, limited access that I have, is that journalists themselves are oftentimes at odds with their editors on this issue. That is what I have encountered. This doesn't mean that there aren't, like, obviously very biased, very pro-Israel reporters. Of course there are, but in terms of like the coverage so far, I think that there is a little bit. I mean, you've seen this with the CBS reporting, if you recall the controversies that took place. After the Tony DeCoppel double circ, Mr. Tony double circ DeCoppel, and his interview that was supposed to be a puff piece for Ta-Nehisi Coates' new book, The Message, turned into like this adversarial situation. There was a lot of back and forth. It seemed like the younger reporters and staffers were at odds with Tony DeCoppel's coverage of The Message and the way that he attacked Ta-Nehisi Coates, whereas executives were like, no, he's doing the right job. Shut the fuck up. Executives, including but not limited to straight up people who were leaking messages directly to the ADL and Barry Weiss in real time while the internal staff meeting was happening, if you remember the controversy. And also on top of that, straight up the Redstone woman, I forget, editors and the managerial class were at odds once again with the reporters. Donda is album of the decade is correct. It's not even a lot of these people are revolutionary. It's dead ass. They see how evil their bosses and editors are. Exactly. Like, you do not, I will repeat this over and over again. You do not have to be a radical, anti-Zionist person who, like, you only need to see the humanity of the Palestinians. You only need to see, victims of Israel's actions as full human beings to arrive at this conclusion. Just so you know. Now, Patrick Soon-Shiong is saying the decision not to endorse in the 2024 race was not tied to the war in Gaza, and his daughter's views were her own opinion. Okay, very quick update, very quick turnaround. This is of 10 minutes ago. Okay, this is literally coming in hot. Nika Soon-Shiong, daughter of LA Times owner Patrick Soon-Shiong, says non-endorsement decision was over Kamala Harris' support for Israel in its war in Gaza. Now, Patrick immediately came out and was like, that's not the case. So I guess I was right. So Pop made a decision, possibly a financial one. And then her super cool daughter decided to be like, Yeah, actually, maybe it's because of Gaza. I love her. She's incredible. She is incredible. Holy shit. Times owner said that his decision not to offer. Okay, so I guess I wasn't eating crow. Turns out I was not eating crow. Turns out my original assessment was correct. Now there's some new shit that is being reported on. I'm ready to put the crow back in my mouth again, though. Okay, I'm ready to put the crow back in my mouth. Who knows? Here's more reporting with sidestepping on the questions from the Papa. Kate is a great reporter. I asked Dr. Soon-Shiong 3 different ways whether Vice President Harris's stance on Israel and the funding of the war in Gaza was a factor, and he sidestepped those questions. He said there are pros and there are cons, and everybody has a pro and a con. What the fuck? What does that? Okay, so maybe the dad is cool on that too a little bit, but maybe he's just worried that he doesn't want to say it's because of Gaza. That's an insane response, by the way. The dad is Kamala. That's a Kamala response. Yeah. Bring that crow back out. Bring that crow back out. I'll bring it back out. I'll eat it. It'll be the most delicious, most tasty crow I've ever eaten. Okay? Straight up. A lot of us are probably asking, what can we do to help Gaza? But Nika, in fact, does not. What do you mean? Yeah, she's not asking. She's doing. Which I respect. 3 members stood by the editorial board, resigned over the move. His daughter says Saturday the Gaza war influenced the decision not to endorse, but a spokesman for Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong said she is not involved. Her words do not represent the family or the LA Times. He said Gaza was not a factor. A decision by the owner of the Los Angeles Times not to endorse the 2024 presidential race after the paper's editorial board proposed. This is such a funny situation. This is the Los Angeles Times, like actual news reporting division on the media reporting side, reporting a story from a staff writer is writing a story about their own newspaper and the complex relationship that it has with its own boss, with its own owner. Hilarious stuff. You love to see it. Times owner Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong said his decision does not to offer readers a recommendation will be less divisive in a tumultuous election year. What do you mean? Every election year is tumultuous. That's so stupid. Hey guys, this election, this one is actually too tumultuous. I have no regrets whatsoever. In fact, I think it was exactly the right decision, he said in an interview with the Times on Friday afternoon. The process was to decide, how do we actually best inform our readers? And there could be nobody better than us to try and sift the facts from fiction while leaving it to readers to make their own final decision. He said he feared that picking one candidate would only exacerbate the already deep divisions in the country. Members of the editorial board protested that the non-endorsement was out of step with the recent precedent at the newspaper, which has picked the presidential candidate in every election since 2008, with the Times' previous editorial position, which has been ardently opposed to former President Trump. Editorials editor Mariel Garza resigned Wednesday. We already covered that. How could we spend 8 years railing against Trump and the danger his leadership poses to the country and then fail to endorse a perfectly decent Democrat challenger who we previously endorsed for the U.S. Senate, Garza wrote Wednesday in her letter of resignation to Times executive editor Terry Tang. The non-endorsement undermines the integrity of the editorial board and every single endorsement we make, down to the school board races. I'm disappointed by the editorial board members resigning the way they did. But that's their choice, right? Soon-Shiong said in the interview. The medical technology billionaire who bought the Times in 2018 posted on the social media site X on Wednesday that he believed he had offered his opinion writers a reasonable alternative to a traditional endorsement. He said they should draft a factual analysis of all the positive and negatives, policies by each candidate during their tenures at the White House, and how these policies affected the nation. I think it's time for George W. Bush to endorse Harris and speak out against Trump, said Liz Cheney at the New Yorker Festival. Oh, gross. Brian, kill me, dude. Brian, kill me. In addition, the board was asked to provide their understanding of the policies and plans enunciated. We already read all that. The editorial board chose to remain silent, Soon-Shiong contended in his X post, and I accepted their decision. The 3 journalists who resigned said they were not silent, but rather disagree with the owner's proposal. The opportunity to instead present a both sides analysis would properly be done by the newsroom, not an editorial board, whose purpose is to take and stand and defend it persuasively. I left in response to the refusal to take a stand, Green wrote, and to the incorrect assertion that the editorial board had made a choice. In a statement Saturday to the New York Times, owner's daughter said her family made the joint decision not to endorse in the presidential race as a citizen of a country openly financing genocide. And as a family that experienced South African apartheid, the endorsement was an opportunity to repudiate justifications for the widespread targeting of journalists and the ongoing war on children. It is pretty crazy because, like, if the editorial board had any balls and they literally said that, that would be a massive news story, and that would be awesome. Like, if they were like, listen, we understand the dangers, the unique dangers that Donald Trump presents, but also there is a unique danger that is being there is a unique violence that is being dished out right now with the full-throated support of America's defense contractors and the American government. Like, it's being perpetuated and unfolding in front of our eyes, and it's been incredibly dangerous to journalists, okay? Hundreds of journalists have died in Israel's bloody war in Gaza. If you want to say war in Gaza, you can still say it, you know what I mean? Hundreds of journalists have been killed in this process. As of last week, Israel still said that they were going to target 6 of the remaining journalists, Al Jazeera journalists, on the ground in North Gaza as they have increased their siege and the brutality of their siege. A directed famine that even the Biden administration has recognized, right? A spokesperson for Nika Soon-Shiong responded Saturday by saying she's not involved. Her words do not represent the family or the LA Times. In his interview to the Times on Friday, Soon-Shiong said the decision was not tied to the war in Gaza and his daughter's views were her own opinion. For many news consumers, the very existence of editorial writers and editorial boards is a point of confusion. They are generally veteran journalists who write editorials that express the position of their news outlet. Though written by one individual, the resulting essays are usually not signed because they express consensus of the board. At the Times, the 8-member editorial board is overseen by Tang, though Garza led day-to-day operations. Soon-Shiong sits on the board, though he attends its thrice weekly meetings only occasionally. It is understood that as owner of the Times, he is entitled to change editorials or to prevent them from being published. Several individuals familiar with the Times Times board say that Soon-Shiong has intervened only on occasion, including the 2020 presidential primary season, when he decided that the Times should not name a favorite. But for the record, people being like, more Gazans are going to die under Trump. So that's you're most likely correct on this. Okay, you're probably not wrong on this statement. The issue, however, is that it's already a genocide that is unfolding, right? And that's the problem. And I'll give you a closer domestic example of this, just so you understand. Let's say the Democratic Party instituted mass concentration camps. They built private prison facilities at the border specifically to start concentration camps for all undocumented citizens on U.S. soil. In dragnet campaigns, they started unleashing BORTAC, which is like the SWAT unit, the extra militarized unit of the Customs and Border Patrol, in constitution-free zones, which happen to be a 100-mile radius from international airports and all lines, all boundaries, sea line, ports of entry into the states. And they started doing this, and they started putting millions of people into concentration camps right now, right? Let's say that they were doing that right now at this very moment. Would you turn around and say, we have to fight back against this, we have to put an end to this, even if it's the Democrats doing this, it doesn't matter? Or would you say, well, when Trump comes into power, he's going to put even more of the remaining migrants into concentration camps? I really hope that your opinion wouldn't be, well, we just got to go with marginally less concentration camps, because the opposite is the opposing side is going to do the same thing, but even worse. I wouldn't vote for Kamala. I have separate issues, but I just can't help but think that not voting directly would help if a single issue voter on this. Do you get the point that I'm making? Do you understand? Libs 100% would do that. Yeah. It's just that the idea that as long as you remain 98% Hitler, you always deserve the votes for fear of 99% Hitler is horrifying. Yeah. But that is the underlying principle behind the lesser evil voting. I do not want Donald Trump to win, because I do believe that Donald Trump will try to do a lot of the things that he said he is going to do. Even attempting to do some of the things, half the things that he said he's going to do, would be genuinely devastating for the lives and livelihoods of tens of millions of Americans. You know, that is the reality. That is also partially, or not even partially, that's entirely why I am so critical of the Kamala campaign. That is also why, on top of that, I am so critical of the Joe Biden administration. The reason is because I don't want Trump to win, and I think she's running a dog shit campaign across the board. And I think on top of that, she is going to make for a very bloody administration. This is the problem. And there are a litany of issues where the Trump administration is objectively worse than the current administration, right? Labor restrictions, destroying the regulatory agencies. And I fear, I see what is happening in America with the decision to undermine the EPA, for example, from the Supreme Court. That came from Trump's Supreme Court appointments, right? Like these issues are destroying this country. These issues are destroying the planet. And without a significant counterweight against this endless sea of fascist sentiment and actions in the direction of fascism, we are inevitably going to do fascism light every single election. But in terms of the current situation, in terms of recognizing what is happening, okay, the genocide in Gaza, the bombing campaigns in Lebanon, all of that is in the hands of the Biden administration. Even in the early months of October, I was very critical of the Biden administration for not trying to restore some order and demonstrate restraint over Israel and maybe even reverse some of Trump's decisions that led to October 7. That was my early analysis on the matter. And since then, since the bear hug strategy has unfolded, I have time and time again been unimaginably critical. We are hurting others and hurting ourselves. I walked by one of those roadside Trump gatherings today in my city, and at one point, there were two young women walking by the group, and one dude on a megaphone yelled, "Vote for Trump or you'll both get raped by immigrants." These people are just so gross, man. And these people being so gross genuinely might be the reason why Kamala pulls it off and not her dog shit campaign. Yeah, no, I think that this has turned into Trump's race to lose once again. And the reason for why I still suspect he will lose is that I think that there are, I'm more worried than I was before, for sure. Because, for months after the DNC, I told liberals, fear not. I still think that Kamala has a pathway to victory. Okay? But months and months and months have gone by as they have run an objectively awful campaign, an awful strategy. And I think that awful strategy has caused this race to be unimaginably close. I still fear that if Kamala Harris does not retain the usual likely Democratic Party voters in the fucking urban areas, black and brown people, and specifically younger voters, that she is not going to be able to pull off enough of the white, college-educated, or just simply white suburban voters in these key districts and pull off a electoral victory. They lost the LA Teachers Union. LA Teachers Union supports blocking U.S. sale of about $20 billion of weaponry to Israel.